Welcome to Small Caps. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and I'm talking today with John Phillips. He's Managing Director of Blue Energy. ASX code is BLU. They are in the gas business, Queensland's North Bowen Basin, unlocking the basin to help the East Coast gas supply. We all know there is a gas crisis, and if you don't, you've been sitting under a rock. John, good to see you. Thanks for joining me on Small Caps today.
Thanks, Kerry. Appreciate the invitation, and it's good to be here.
Well, it's good to have you back. Last time that you and I spoke about the energy crisis, it was about a year ago, John, and nothing has gone away. And in fact, it has probably got a lot worse. You are really well across what's happening. And what I like about Blue Energy is that you will be delivering to the domestic market here in Australia. And Lord knows we do have a crisis in there at the moment. What's your view of what's happening right now?
It's multifaceted, lots of moving parts. It's clear that the position in the Ukraine has been one where Russia has withheld gas to most of the EU countries through Stream 1 through maintenance issues. So Germany is clutching at every conceivable way of getting around using Russian gas for the coming winter. They're now telling people to collect firewood.
Oh, wow.
For the winter. Some Polish people are queuing to stockpile coal for their internal heaters. So, and you've seen the prices in the TTF and the MBP in the UK going through the roof. I think it's about a 70 or 80% increase per month. And so that's been in price, and that's been going on for some time now. And I think on an annual basis, the British price is up about 600%, and the Dutch price is probably similar, 500%. So that's going to have a knock-on effect in the UK in particular, where some businesses are not getting any protection from that price increase. And they're talking about pubs not being able to open over winter because they can't run the heating. So it's going to have a very large impact on social life, inflationary pressures, and it's and also the export of LNG from the US Gulf Coast into Europe to basically top up the declining or dwindling amounts of Russian gas coming into European Union countries. So that's one aspect of it. I think the knock-on effect from that is a lot of cargoes are coming out of, or a lot of gas is coming out of Asian customers' hands into Europe to fill the void, and that's putting a price point pressure on the spot market to supply gas out of Australia. So JKM, which is the spot market out of North Asia, that is running at around about $66 US an MMBTU, which translates to a netback price in Wallumbilla of $93 Aussie a gigajoule. So if in fact we are beholden on the East Coast for most of our gas to come from the LNG exporters by way of diverting gas into the domestic market, they have a choice to make. They can either sell gas into the domestic market at $13 Aussie a gigajoule, or they can take any excess gas and sell it into the spot market for 93 equivalent.
Yeah.
So the arbitrage is huge, and they would be wanting to make as much money as they could. So we are on the East Coast anyway, at the behest of the benevolence of the LNG players in Curtis Island to divert gas they would ordinarily supply into the spot market into the domestic market. And you've seen Minister Madeleine King talking with the LNG exporters on the East Coast here about the ADGSM and how that's going to be, I guess, rejigged or reaffirmed with some new parameters to it to ensure that, again, we continue our reliance on the East Coast supply through from the LNG producers. My argument is we have perfectly good domestic gas players in the exploration and appraisal phase to be bringing gas into the market if we are encouraged to do so. And that's where Blue's project up in the North Bowen Basin is at a pivotal point. We are drilling our pilot wells as we speak. We put 4 laterals in and 2 verticals in. We should have those on production in October to production test to establish deliverability rates and reserves upgrades to underpin the contracts or the offtake agreements we've signed with Origin and Energy Australia in Wallumbilla for long-term supply of about 400 petajoules of gas over 10 years. So that's going straight into the domestic market. And what that will also do is once those contracts are firmed up, that will underpin the economics of a pipeline to bring that gas from our Moranbah project area into Wallumbilla. Now that's important because it's not just our gas that would supplement the domestic market. There's around about 30 years worth of gas in the North Bowen Basin that's been discovered already, 30 years of domestic gas supply discovered already. We have about 20% of that at about 3,000 petajoules, and the other operators up there have the lion's share at 80%. So having connection between the North Bowen Basin into the East Coast market via a 450 kilometre pipeline is critical to secure long-term reliable supply of gas into the East Coast market, both for electricity generation and for manufacturers and also for household supply through Energy Australia and Origin.
John, you mentioned just a little bit earlier the arbitrage between the domestic gas price and the spot price. Why wouldn't you, as Blue Energy, when it gets into production, turn around and go, well, let's just put it into the spot price market and sell it overseas?
Well, we have that opportunity because the amount that we've contracted or undertaken to supply to the domestic market is around about 500 petajoules between Origin Australia, Origin Energy Australia and Queensland Pacific Metals in Townsville. It's about 500 PJs of our portfolio, but our portfolio in that North Bowen Basin is around 3,000 petajoules. So that leaves us with about 2,500 petajoules of gas that we can market to the highest bidder or the highest market. So we have that ability to be able to market that gas into the LNG community, if you will.
Just for our audience, how much does the East Coast need? How much does the East Coast need to supply the market in terms of petajoules?
So the annual consumption on the East Coast for gas in the domestic realm is about 500 petajoules per annum.
Okay.
In total, the East Coast market is around about 2,000 petajoules. So 1,500 petajoules of that goes out of Gladstone to the LNG buyers in Asia. So 500 petajoules. So effectively what we've contracted or agreed to supply to the domestic market is about a year's worth of gas, but it's spread over 10 years. So we're supplying about 10% of the current East Coast market over 10 years.
When you mentioned the pilot wells and that you're going to be doing some testing on them, just talk to us, for those of us that don't know the process that you have to go through. The gas is there, the pilot wells are going down, you do, what is it, flow testing, is it?
Yeah, production testing over an extended period to gauge the deliverability and the long-term decline of those wells, so you can then go through the process of planning your development, because this is just a pilot scheme of 4 or 8 wells or 10 wells in a certain area to get an idea of the seams and what they would deliver. But we have to drill out the block in this case, which is a production license application 1034 for the technically minded. So that would then give us the idea of how to develop that broader field, if you like, for the full, what have we got, 300 petajoules of gas in that one block currently. So the difference is we have currently 2P reserves, 3P reserves attributed to us because we're sitting 2 kilometres from the nearest producing gas well from another project, the Moranbah gas project. It's been de-risked. We know the gas is there. We know the seams that are being encountered. We're targeting individual seams with each of these pilot wells to be able to assess each seam's deliverability. So it is an established field or area where there's known gas production, has been on production in the other operators' area for the last 12 to 15 years. So it is geologically de-risked, and that is not that is dissimilar to the other project areas where Australia's next new gas supply can come from. So by comparison, the North Bowen Basin is well ahead of the Galilee Basin, Beetaloo Basin, and potentially the Narrabri area, because we have been in production for 12 odd years, as in the basin, North Bowen Basin, not Blue. And so that's been de-risked with production profiles. And we have large community support for what we do.
Oh, well, that's pretty important as well. But you mentioned the pipeline. That's what's required to get the gas from where it is within your areas to the market.
Currently, there is no connection south from the North Bowen Basin to the East Coast market at, say, Wallumbilla. The federal and state government are jointly funding a study conducted by KPMG together with GHD, the engineers, and Netherlands Sewell, subsurface people. They will deliver their second phase of the report probably by November, which will look at the commerciality and what players are available to construct the line. The important thing about that pipeline from the state's perspective, and probably the federal government's perspective at this point, is the focus not only on developing coal seam gas, but also capturing and utilising the fugitive emissions from the coal mines. And the coal mines in the North Bowen Basin are probably responsible for about 30 to 35% of the Australian greenhouse gas emissions currently. Okay. Now, it's being flared or vented. And so the state government on royalties, and the nation gets an increase in its greenhouse gas emissions by not capturing that gas. So dual-purposed pipeline to develop the coal seam gas and also to capture the mine fugitive emissions.
So how confident are you that federal and state governments will understand how important this gas pipeline is and get on with it and construct something which is of the right size to bring this gas to market?
Well, I think it's pertinent to realise that Bass Strait is declining rapidly.
Absolutely.
And what this does is it opens up a new basin which has scale. 15,000 petajoules in the North Bowen Basin is enough for 30 years of domestic supply if it all went there.
Wow.
So that is the largest source of gas or deposit of gas, if you like, that's available at the moment within close proximity to the market, being the East Coast, compared to, say, the Beetaloo, which is further away and needs some significant infrastructure come south. The Narrabri is a promising project. Santos are working hard to get community licence on that, but in the end, it's only about 2,500 petajoules of contingent resource in that basin. So its scale is probably enough for New South Wales for maybe 3 or 5 years of demand. It does not address the longer term supply issue that's required to bring gas prices down.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it, John?
Correct.
Because those gas prices are going up and away, and there's too much control, I think. I mean, who does control the gas market on the East Coast at the moment?
About 85 to 90% of the 2P reserves on the East Coast, so from the North Bowen Basin right down to, let's say, Gippsland, about 90% of the 2P reserves are controlled by entities that have interests in export LNG terminals. So there's very few pure domestic gas suppliers. And so those pure domestic gas suppliers are reliant on having gas coming into the domestic market, whereas the LNG players exporting out of Curtis Island have that dual capacity to drip in, to supply the domestic gas market when they see fit.
Yeah, which is not a very wise thing for us as the energy crisis increases.
And you can draw a rather long bow, but nonetheless, that we are reliant on the benevolence of the LNG players to supply gas into the domestic market, just as Germany was reliant on Russia to supply gas into the German market. I'm not comparing Russia with our export LNG colleagues at all, but it is a similar sort of, I guess, bind we've got ourselves in terms of controlling our own destiny when it comes to security of supply. We're reliant on the LNG players to supply gas to the domestic market. They have the capacity to deliver, that's true. They're producing large quantities of gas on a daily basis up to Curtis Island, so they can divert should they choose to, and if the price signal is right, they can choose to divert into the domestic market.
But you said before the arbitrage is too great and they're into making money. So why would they divert into the domestic market? Perhaps it needs a little bit of government intervention, even though I am not the sort of person that says I want government to interfere in everything, but maybe it does need a little bit of that.
And that's indeed why Minister King is talking to the proponents about the ADGSM and what triggers it and tweaking some of the conditions within it. I think it's fair to say that given their druthers, the LNG players would prefer not to have government intervention. And it's the last thing I would have thought that we'd be seeing here, given the knock-on effect on sovereign risk and investment going forward. And we've seen that issue raise its ugly head with the increase in royalty on coal in Queensland in particular. The spectre of sovereign risk for Australia and Queensland has become an issue, I think it's fair to say, for our major trading partners.
John, I want to get into the investment thesis for blue energy. And as I said right at the start, ASX code, ladies and gentlemen, is BLU. Right now, we spoke about the pilot wells. You're a small player in quite a big marketplace. Why do you see blue energy being a good opportunity for investors out there at the moment?
We have done the work to establish a large gas resource base. We have 2P reserves, 3P reserves, and a large contingent resource base, all done by reputable international tier 1 certifiers. So that's the one thing. We've got a large resource base. We are actively drilling pilot wells now to underpin the gas offtake agreements we've signed with Origin, QPM, and Energy Australia. And what we're trying to do with that is underpin the economics of a pipeline connection coming to the south from the North Bowen Basin so we can supply the domestic market and take the pressure off prices.
So those agreements that you've done with Origin, PGM, and what was the other one?
Energy Australia.
Energy Australia. Are they binding offtake agreements? Where are you at?
Not yet. I mean, it would be a brave offtaker to sign a binding agreement when there's no pipeline to get them the gas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So that is one of the CPs that we will need to address when we cement this to a gas sale agreement. So the offtake agreement is non-binding. We are trying to convert that to a binding gas sale agreement by underpinning a pipeline and also demonstrating we have the reserve base and we have the deliverability.
Would you be able to just talk to us about that pipeline? Because that's kind of like the last, that's the key to everything, isn't it? Because you can have the gas sitting out there, but if you can't get it into the market, Correct. Where are you at?
So at the moment, we are exposed to the smaller North Queensland market in Townsville. There is existing infrastructure. As I said, the North Bowen Basin around Moranbah has been on production since about 2006, delivering gas into the local Moranbah explosives manufacturer and also up into Townsville, where the former Queensland Nickel plant was and the power station. So there's an existing pipeline there. The capacity of the market up there is limited at the moment, but we have an offtake agreement agreement to supply QPM in Townsville of about 112 PJs over 15 years. So we have access to a market. It's a small market and would only take around about 100 petajoules of our 3,000. The bigger market, and where the prices are under pressure, is in the East Coast market, where there is no connection. The pipeline is not built yet, and we are taking it upon ourselves to deliver our gas into that market by underpinning a pipeline from our reserve base and our offtake agreements.
How long would it take to build that pipeline?
We believe it's an 18-month build from a
Okay.
We are hoping that, I mean, our gas offtake agreements would probably satisfy a 20-inch pipeline, but you really do need a significant sized pipeline to take the full volume of the North Bowen Basin, which I've said is 15,000 odd petajoules. So we don't want to be in the business of duplicating. And we've said before, many times, not only going to Curtis Island from Wallumbilla, but in the territory going from Tennant Creek into Mount Isa, there was I think Gemina put in the NGP, which was, I think it's a 12 or 14-inch pipeline based on what they could get out of Blacktip. Now with the Beetaloo, they're having to think about twinning that pipeline with a bigger diameter line. So you're seeing a waste of CapEx by not thinking 5, 10, 15 years ahead, like a lot of our trading partners do think ahead. So having the foresight to say, and for the government to say, actually, we need to drain that basin in the next 20 years. We need a pipeline that is much bigger than what Blue is going to put in. That would be an opportunity for the federal government and the state government to step in and say, we'll back that pipeline to the bigger diameter, so that all the gas in the North Bowen Basin can be brought to market in a reasonable timeframe.
John, I hope they do think sensibly like that, because I so agree with you. Let's not think short term, ladies and gentlemen. If the government's listening to this, could we please have, the longer term thinking? Because you're right. It's like, why would you build a small pipeline when, you might as well do it with a long term?
And the other thing, Kerry, is large diameter pipelines throughout the country, which I might say the governments of the day are primarily responsible for constructing. All the major linkages between the gas fields and the end users have been provided by government over the last 5 decades. Now, that then also provides us with storage capacity. Our biggest storage capacity are the pipelines. You can pump them up and take them, blow them down, and you have line pack. So what we are seeing in this country at a time of high gas prices and international demand, you're seeing our security of supply being threatened, not only in the liquid sense from oil and diesel coming in from Singapore, etc. Our strategic petroleum reserve is sitting in the US. It's got to go across the sea. We do not have sufficient storage to be able to underpin a reasonable length of security of supply in this nation, both for gas and for liquid petroleum products. And you may remember the kerfuffle about Iona going back maybe a month, when there was a very low capacity in that field, and that put pressure on prices as well, because they couldn't draw any more gas out of it at a time when things were getting quite cold and wet and windy down in Melbourne. And they were struggling with, and they put the cap on the gas price at $40 gigajoule.
Wow. How did we get to this, John? And I want to talk briefly, if we could. Let's end with how we got to this. But you recently Blue Energy raised $20 million. Was that to accelerate the development at one of your prospects? Talk to us about where that money's being spent.
Yeah. So we did, as you said, we raised $20 million at the end of June, early July, specifically to augment the pilot drilling we are currently doing and accelerate the production testing results, if you will, by closing the drainage areas of the respective pilots in each of the seams that we're targeting. So that chunk of money was designed to accelerate that drilling of pilot wells and production testing. The other thing we did was we received a resource upgrade in our 854 block, which is in the Surat Basin, close to Wallumbilla. A resource upgrade we received from Netherland Sewell of about 300%, so that our carrying 3C contingent resource base is around about 400 petajoules of recoverable gas, sitting around about 50 kilometres from Wallumbilla, but about 10 kilometres from existing gas pipeline infrastructure. So what we want to do with some of that money we raised is put some wells in that block to demonstrate reserve and deliverability as well.
What is next up for you? I guess before I get into, let's summarize all this, John. Why do you think, what's next in the pipe? Sorry to use this pun. What's next in the pipeline for Blue Energy? The pilot test, the pilot wells? Is that the main focus?
Correct. We will be finishing up the first set of pilots probably by the end of September, early October. We're currently starting to drill the lateral sections now. So we're going to be putting 1,000 metres of horizontal wells in 4 different seams coming into a vertical well. So a bit like that over the next 4 or 5 weeks. That will then give us the ability to complete those wells and put them on production tests. So we should see flow rate data in late October, early November. It will take a while for that to peak and then stabilise. But we'll be on test probably from about mid to late October. That will then give us flow rate data, again, which is critical to the offtake agreements. At the same time, we'll be planning for the next phase of that pilot, which is to drill next door with another 4 to 5 wells to augment and accelerate the production testing results. At the same time, we're planning to get the rig down to the Sapphire Basin to, as I said, address the potential of ATP 854 and the 400 petajoules sitting right next to infrastructure, which could provide I guess, a quicker to market solution for that gas down there, rather than having to build a 450 kilometre pipeline, which we will do in any case, because the relative scale between our Sapphire Block and the North Bowen Basin block is 3,000 petajoules versus 400 petajoules.
Yeah.
So still the jewel in the crown is the North Bowen Basin for us. But this sweetener, if you like, at the 854 block is something we can develop more quickly.
And in developing that, John, would that then start to give you some cash flow into the company?
I would say it opens up the opportunities to deal in that asset. Should we? It gives us the optionality to deal in the asset, develop the gas and get revenue, or get a farming partner to help quicken it up.
Okay.
So we don't have a bigger drain on shareholder funds.
Yeah, and I think that's what people want to hear as well, that there is an opportunity to there's no more drainage on shareholder funds. We're going to actually get some revenue coming in. That's a smaller, I guess, area that you're doing. But as you say, closer to infrastructure, easier to get up, but not nearly as big as the North Bowen Basin.
No, that's correct. That's correct. And it's also in the precinct where all the LNG players collect their gas and send to Curtis Island.
All right, we're running out of time, John. Very quickly, if you could, why do you think now, 3 reasons why you think now our community, our investor community, should be sitting up and taking notice of Blue Energy?
I'll give you 4. Gas price. Current gas price, which is going to be a longer term issue, I think, than people realise. We have gas reserves, large gas reserve and resource base in the North Bowen Basin, but with optionality in the Sapphire. We have active pilot well drilling and upcoming production testing. And we have the ability to be involved in infrastructure, significant nation building infrastructure, coming south out of a large gas resource rich basin, which is the North Bowen Basin, into the domestic market to supply the domestic market and put a downward pressure on gas prices.
There you had it, ladies and gentlemen. Blue Energy, an Aussie company helping everyday Australians to make sure that their gas prices and the market doesn't get out of control. John is very well versed in not only the macro picture, but ensuring that Blue Energy delivers for shareholders and delivers for everyday Australians into the East Coast market, which quite frankly does need an increase in gas supply. John, great to see you today. Thanks for joining me on Small Caps. And come back when those flow tests are done and let's give an update to the market.
My pleasure, Kerry. Will do. Thank you very much.